Hey, welcome to Tell Us Like It Is. I'm Brian Tellis. A show or a chat through which we hope to bring out the person behind the personality. And I'm sure we will today. You know, A.R. Rahman interestingly once said, music is meant to liberate us, to take us into an elevated state of mind. How true is that? I have with me in the studio a certain gentleman who does that 5 days a week, every month, every year. Catch this, for the last 3 decades. So I'm really truly privileged to have with me friend and professional Hrishikesh Kannan, and I'm going to insist on calling him Rishi. Hey Rishi, welcome to the show, my friend.
Man, I'm grinning like a Cheshire cat because you know how I feel about you, and you're not just a friend but somebody who's been a mentor to so many of us, and just to be in the same frame as you. And I've interviewed you, lest you forget, on the radio many a time for your wonderful, theatrical pursuits, and for all the wonderful IPs that you've created. So it's just an honor, privilege, and pleasure to be sitting next to you.
Thank you. I'm turning pink in the cheeks, my friend. Okay, so like I said earlier, 3 decades in the business, 3 decades on radio, spreading joy through music. Tell us about it.
Well, since I started at age 2 and...
So then make it 60 years.
I'm just blessed to be in the position that I'm in, because there are people who spend decades of their life trying to find the true meaning in their life. They switch multiple professions, hoping to find their calling. And I found my calling very early on in life. Some would call it limited intelligence, but... And to be able to find that calling and to pursue it and make a profession out of it, what else can you call it but a blessing? That's pretty much the way I'd like to summarize it at the top. And what are we but our life experiences? And at the time when you're kids, you always blame your old man and woman, saying, why are they moving across multiple cities? And my dad and mom were working professionals who worked across multiple cities. And I grew up in 3 cities. And now I can't thank them enough. Because the kind of awareness and like a sponge, what you absorb from multiple cultures is something that no school or establishment can give you.
Absolutely right. A couple of things that really strike me. I listen a lot to you on radio, and a couple of things that come across really strongly and that seriously work for you and have helped you create this personality, unmatchable personality on radio, is firstly that you specialize in talking to me rather than talking to the millions who are listening to you. You personalize your voice and your communication on radio. That's the first thing. The second thing is, your mindfulness. I don't know how else to say it, but you are so rooted in the moment when you speak on radio. Tell us a little bit about this whole personality of yours on radio. Has it evolved? Have you studied radio? Have you learnt it on the go?
I did a master's in film, television, and radio production at Xavier's, at the Xavier's Institute of Communication. And if you ask me if I've studied, but beyond that, it's something that wisdom and practice, those are the 2 things that can teach you this. I realized very early on that friends, Romans, countrymen, which is speaking to the larger multitude, never works in the profession. And that's the only thing I'd like to impart to any young kid who's trying to get into radio today. And I've always tried to talk to an individual, whether it's a guest who's next to me or whether I'm speaking into a mic. And I think that has helped me. And listening is undervalued on the radio. And if you ask me, I think listening is as important, if not more important, than speaking. All radio presenters at some point in their life tend to fall in love with their own voice. And I've realized with the example, people like yourself, and I always quote your example. And I quote Mr. Amin Sayani's example, who's another stalwart in Hindustani broadcasting. They might not have had traditional silky velvet baritone voices, Brian Tellis and Amin Sayani, which will sell commercials, but man, are they friendly, are those voices friendly, because they can soak you in and give you comfort that no brand voice, quote unquote brand voice, can do. Few of us are, I think, lucky that we straddle both worlds, which is voiceovers and radio. But really, if you look at it, there's not much in common, because radio is in some ways the complete antithesis of that. It's about being yourself, just being natural. And once people can go beyond the voice and say it's not the voice that is me, but the listening and the personality and the camaraderie, then you strike gold.
So it is personality that comes out. Speaking of which, Rishi, well said. I want to roll back the years. Roll back 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, we won't go there. But we'd roll back the years to Rishi as this young boy. Sport was something that grabbed you?
Oh yeah, and how? My father and mother still play tennis. My father's 76 and my mother's 72. In fact, they retired. They moved from Bombay to Bangalore and built themselves a wonderful retirement home in the outskirts of Bangalore. And even when they're here visiting, they play tennis every day. So my father is here currently because we've had a second daughter, and he's still at the club playing tennis every single day. And that's the house I grew up in. A father who's actually done the Grand Slam in terms of travel. He's actually been to all the Grand Slams as a spectator. And my earliest memory is at the age of 4.5, being given cut pieces of print, of paper, of Stan Smith's tennis class. So in Calcutta, is, as you would know, it was and continues to be the hotbed of culture. I mean, it was, people don't realize, it was the capital of India before Delhi became the capital of India. And, there are stories which are legendary of Park Street and, the live musicians and the sporting culture and the music culture. And I grew up in the hotbed of that. And so the newspapers would have Stan Smith's tennis class.
Yeah.
Stan Smith was an erstwhile Wimbledon champion. My father used to cut them out and put them in a file and give them to me. And then at age 4.5, he took me to the club we used to live across the road from and started me hitting on the wall. And then enrolled me in coaching with Akhtar Ali, whose son Zishan eventually played for India. And he was Davis Cup captain and coach. And my school had a very, very important role to play in that, because Le Martinet for boys, where I went to, of course, there were 3 of us rogues in school together. There was Leander Paes, who's India's foremost tennis player, Sunny Uthup, who's Auntie Usha Uthup's son, who at the time was a very good sports person and now is an entrepreneur, and yours truly. Were the 3 rogues in class. And, we played a vista of sport, but tennis was really it for me. And I ended up playing Bengal State under 10. The under 10 nationals were 9-year-old Leander Paes and 9-year-old Hrishikesh going to Coimbatore with the Bengal State team. And I still remember we lost in the semi-finals because it's a team event. You play singles and also doubles.
Right.
But we did pretty well for ourselves. So we were the bright sparks at the time. And I was left-handed and Lee was right-handed. Calcutta also had this wonderful culture of parent and child tennis tournaments. Can you believe that?
Tell us about it.
So Dr. Wes Pace, Uncle Wes, and Leander, and my dad and me would be in the finals 9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10. It was an annual parent and child tournament. And it had become so famous that even though it was played in the state of West Bengal, fathers or mothers and children would come from all across the country. So, you had parent and child pairs from the Bombay gym and, from Kanpur Gymkhana and this and that. And we'd find ourselves in the final very, very often. And the fathers were, they were chilled out.
True. I mean, West Pace is legendary.
Yeah,
I mean, I think father, son, both bronze Olympic medalists. Wes won it in hockey in,
Totally.
I think it was 74, and 96, Leander in Atlanta won the bronze in tennis.
Yeah, and Uncle Wes, handsome, strapping man.
Oh, absolutely.
Likewise, my father, the envy of all the ladies in Calcutta at the time, with these 2 rascals on the court next to them, covering up and playing most of it. And we guys were just put at the net.
I believe the Suns have also turned out to be quite the same. Huh? You're allowed to be honest on the show, incidentally.
So we would be put up at the net, and our fathers used to keep hitting from the background and this and that. And sometimes just, a lob would come short. And the idea was, Kannan, you have to hit pace, and pace, you have to hit Kannan. So the whole idea was, go for the body shot.
Right, it has to be competitive, right? I mean, that's what it's about. So you played tennis, and then there was an unfortunate incident that happened.
Yeah. So my dad retired as vice president of L&T, and he had hit the board of L&T in Bombay, and he used to work half and half out of Ballad Estate, where the head office was, and the Powai factory, the erstwhile Powai factory. But before that, he was in a transferable job. So from Calcutta, in my 8th standard, he got a posting to head the UP unit of Larsen & Toubro, the engineering company in Lucknow. So the family moved to Lucknow in the 8th standard, and subsequently my tennis mate, and at that time, moved to Chennai because Vijay Amritraj was starting the Britannia Amritraj Tennis Academy.
Right.
BAT, and he went. And my other mate, Sunny Uthup, went to Lawrence School, to boarding. So literally the three of us were separated at the same time. Me, because I was getting transferred, Pace, because he got into Vijay's academy, and Sunny, because he was banished to boarding school. Yeah, because Auntie Busha was busy touring and things like that. And anyway, to cut a long story short, we go to UP, and I start playing tennis in Lucknow. Not much of a tennis culture, but my father was brilliant. I mean, he'd drive me to tennis practice and back, still coach me. My father, in fact, is a certified tennis coach from Roy Emerson. Roy Emerson is another Grand Slam winner. And, though engineering and career called, and he wasn't able to take it up competitively, he still was such a good player that he wanted to give back to the game. So he's trained by Roy Emerson, the Australian, as a coach, and he was coaching me, and I started playing for UP State. So I was in the top 3 in UP State in the under 14 category, and then eventually I went on to play under 16. By which time I'd also started doing a lot of elocution and debates, and whatever you do in my community. Like, you can give me home truths about Mangaloreans, I can give you home truths about the Tambram community. You do not neglect your studies. You have to be surrounded by books, you have to study, that's it. And by study, I don't mean finish your 12th standard, you have to graduate and do a post-graduation, if possibly a doctorate. Right. Because I don't have a doctorate, I was probably the black sheep of my family. So I was doing decently well in extracurriculars and academics, and I became head boy of my school. And I was also singing. I mean, now I only barely sing karaoke. We had a bit of a school band, and by the time I had emotionally blackmailed my parents into getting me a two-wheeler. And I had just become a head boy of school, entered my 12th standard, and I was in full school uniform on the way to sing at an inter-school music festival as the lead vocalist of my band. And we were going to sing When Doves Cry by Prince. Yeah. That was supposed to be our prize-winning moment. And I wasn't really even speeding. I mean, I have been a speed demon in the past, but on that day I wasn't. It's called Murphy's Law. Yeah. And I saw a white ambassador coming at me, and the last thing I remember is I woke up outside a government hospital called the City Hospital. Turns out the ambassador hit me straight on, and I broke my 3rd cervical vertebra and my playing wrist. And also there was fluid accumulation in my knee. Now, the 3rd cervical vertebra is a very dangerous fracture to have. The knee was had to be syringed out, all the fluid. The hand, the arm, the wrist was in a cast, and I was in a collar. Yeah, I pretty much spent 9 months in that. And
that was the end of tennis, wasn't it?
Well, you can't get back to competitive tennis. People have, but let's just say that at that stage of my life, I just said, it's too long a haul for me to start at scratch, because to get back on your feet takes you about 9 or 10 months. And after that, you're asked to be very careful because it's a cervical vertebra fracture.
India lost a champion that day.
And then it was all downhill, and look at my weight. And but
I don't know about downhill. I don't know about downhill because I do not know how many people know this, but young Hrishikesh also fiddled through life. A violin player. Tell us about that.
If we had a roof in our apartment in Calcutta, I would have been called the fiddler on the roof. But yeah, that was Calcutta. I mean, it was just remarkable. We had a school orchestra run by this extraordinary man called Abraham Mojumdar, who was a violinist himself, a virtuoso pianist. And very early on, I was put into music class and I started learning the violin. And I made the school orchestra. And what you do is you take Trinity College of Music exams. So the examiner comes from Great Britain, from the United Kingdom, and you take these exams. So, I did 2 theory examinations, 3 practical examinations. It's actually initial, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. That's the way it works. And I wouldn't say I was a master of my craft, but I was pretty okay.
There's no need to be modest, my friend. There's no need to be modest.
So yeah, it is. That violin is gathering dust in my parents' bungalow in Bengaluru in the attic. I look upon it with fond memories, and the size let off everywhere. But I think what really happened is in the 8th standard, when we moved to Lucknow, I couldn't find a violin teacher. At least not one that was in the immediate vicinity, And when you're a school kid, distances do matter, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And when you've got studies to do and you've got tennis to play and this and that, it's not like in Calcutta where I was getting instruction or I was being trained in school, and lessons would happen during or after school hours. To find a private tutor and then to travel across town to find a Western classical violin teacher was just too hard a trudge. And I still remember that till the beginning of the 9th standard, I would still give it a go, just hang around. My parents would say, why don't you play it? And you know how it is. Family comes over, friends come, oh, come on, and you pull it out and play a little bit.
You should pick it up even today and play us a happy tune. Now, you mentioned your parents' home in Bangalore, and you mentioned it's lying there in the attic. A little bird told me that there are many, many hundreds of books lying there as well, which triggers off another question. You're a crazy man, right? You've read hundreds upon hundreds of books, and I'm told you read 2 books a week up to today.
I still do.
Tell us a bit about your crazy reading habit.
Well, again, I've got to come back to culture. In Tambran families, you don't get the latest pair of cool jeans or sunglasses or a resplendent shirt on your birthday or on special occasions. You're given books. And for as long as I can remember, on special occasions, whether if it was Diwali or whether it was Pongal, which is a South Indian festival, or it was my birthday, I would be given a book by my father, And I think that has remained as a tradition. I love gifting books. I love reading books. I'm still old-fashioned. I like the physical copy of it. I still have a few, ones on Kindle and online books. And I'm just a voracious reader, It's like that Bruce Springsteen song, I learned more from a 3-minute record baby than I ever learned in school. So my version of the record is just the books. And it can be anything. It can be fiction, it can be non-fiction, it can be autobiographies and biographies. And then eventually, it's become a part of my profession because I still interview one author a week on my show, a writer a week, which means one book I read, which is for professional reasons, and the other one is always for personal growth. And I continue to do that. So a lot of people watch OTT platforms, or they watch a movie, before they go to sleep. I read for about 40 minutes to an hour before I go to sleep. And even during the day, if I'm fortunate enough to to be driven either in a radio taxi, or if I have a chauffeur, I will sit in the back seat and read. And I really, really enjoy myself. I can immerse myself into anything from Amitav Ghosh's or Salman Rushdie's novels to even children's books.
That is amazing. That is amazing, Rishi. I mean, I'm a bit of a book reader myself. I still do. Heavily into autobiographies and biographies. Love getting to know the person behind the personality, like we're talking about today. But to go through 2 books, I don't want to make it sound like a chore, but 2 books a week, wow.
Well, my wife has enough reason to complain, because there's one room which is just full of books, and it's like, entering a scientist's lair. There's just books everywhere, some of them gathering cobwebs. The stuff that you read about in Satyajit Ray novels or, movies and things like that. And now I've promised her that I'm going to be a good boy, and I found a lending library that I lend to. There's this guy who comes home and picks up, I'm like a treasure for him. But I just love that. I love the fact that I can just donate, and obviously I don't charge anything. I just give it away to a lending library. But I'm just happy that people are still reading.
Absolutely right. I saw a picture of your parents' home in Bangalore with books all over the place.
Even my home too, yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. You mentioned your wife, Anchal, and you mentioned you'll have had your second kid. I'm going to kind of, spend a few moments having you chat about your family life.
Well, what are we without our wives, Brian? I mean, you've married such a wonderful woman. I can't say enough about the beautiful woman Charmaine is, and we just lucked out, I guess. Achal is that. I joked with her after my first child was born, because she used to act in TV serials. She was an actress in soaps, doing the daily soap and the weekly soap grind. I was like, if you want to get back to work after this, it's perfectly all right, because I don't want to be blamed for taking your career away. And she said, no, this is the best fun she's ever had in her life, raising our first daughter. And then I said, you want to, make babies again? Because we seem to be making some beautiful babies. And she said, yeah. It just happened again. And this is where I wanted myself to be. I mean, no disrespect to boy childs, that I know you have 2 wonderful boys who've done you proud. But we didn't even have the name for a boy ready. We call our elder one Tiara, the young one Ira. And for a brief moment, I looked at her and I said, what if it's a boy? We don't even have a name ready. And in India, it's illegal to find out what you're having. And we respect that. And we never found out. And she said, no, it's going to be a girl.
Except that my 2 boys are way older than your 2 girls. We could have been having chats.
Correct.
That go beyond tell us like it is.
Yeah. So I just lucked out, man. I mean, I'm surrounded by 3 beautiful women, and my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law lives down the road. My mother in Bengaluru, I see enough of her. So yeah, what are we without the women in our life?
Absolutely true. Well said. I believe you met Anchal or proposed to Anchal in really, beautiful circumstances.
Well, yeah, this is a sweet little nugget. So I pass out of XIC, the Xavier Institute of Communications. At the time, it was called a master's, a postgraduate diploma in film, television, radio production, and I topped my class. My parents were so proud, more proud than they ever been hearing me on the radio, because academics is it, right? And Father Myron, who was heading XIC at the time, called me back and he said, you've topped the class, why didn't you think of teaching? So I said, look, I'm on radio. At that time, I was already working at the time for a Hindi radio station. And I was like, so he said, you're on air Monday to Friday. So I said, yeah. So he said, your weekends are free. And yeah, and at the time I was a bachelor. So he said, we have a 12-week crash course called ABCD, Announcing, Broadcasting, Computing, Dubbing, and we need somebody to teach that 12-week course. It's 3 hours a week on a Saturday. So are you up for it? Would you like to do it? So I go, yeah, I mean, sounds okay. I mean, all the skills that you learned, what use are they if you can't pass them on?
True.
I see you nurture so many people in Fountainhead and Orange Juice, and I see the joy that you get out of it. And I wanted to be able to see that joy, to just be able to nurture people. And I taught a few batches, and I was a teacher there for a few years. Unfortunately, I had to give it up because one of the radio stations I was working to insisted that I also get on the air on a Saturday, but then that's another story. And whilst I was teaching, and let me tell you, lest I be accused of cradle snatching, it's a crash course which anybody can enroll in. So I had doctors and engineers and people in the corporate life all coming in. And Achal was at the time anchoring and acting, and she just wanted to upgrade her skills. And somebody said, Excise is a good place. Maybe you should go and do this course. So she finishes 12 weeks of this course, and we don't meet, we don't keep in touch or anything. I just get a call one fine day, and she goes, "Hello, I'm Achal, and I was your student at XIC at the ABCD class. I hope you don't mind. I've called you. I got your number from the office." So I made a mental note saying, maybe I should call Father Myron and say, "Why are you giving my number away?" And she said, "I'm really sorry, but it's just that, is it possible for us to meet? Because I'm trying to look for some more work, and since you know so many people, if you'd be able to help me." So she goes, "You live in Andheri?" So I said, "Yeah." She says, "I live there too, so, can we meet?" And normally I'm always running from one voiceover to another, radio, this, that, whatever. But it so happened that day that I was free. And she said, "Do you remember?" I said, "Listen, I'm really sorry. I don't remember you, but I don't forget a face. If I see you, I'll remember." So I meet her at this coffee shop.
Especially a pretty one.
I have to say that now, yes. Well, so I meet her at this coffee shop, and what was supposed to be a 15-minute meeting just went on for about 2.5 hours. And I asked her subsequently, I said, that first meeting when, of course, when I met her, I said, "Yeah, I recognize this girl. She was in my class. She's one of the brighter ones." And those days she used to wear a nose ring. It's hard to forget in a woman. Now she's given it up. So, and I remember asking her subsequently, saying, "What is it that impressed you?" She said, "Your parting line." I said, "What did I say?" She said, "You got up from the coffee shop, and as I was saying bye to you, you said, 'Don't disappear on me.'" I said, "Wow, I said that? Don't disappear on me?" Did you ever say that to anybody else? I said, "No." I said, but yeah, maybe I did well on that front.
You were dishonest. Again.
So apparently that was what impressed her. And then, the text exchange and the meeting and this and that. And one thing just led to another. And it's just...
Divine intervention, they call it.
Yeah.
Happily married, couple of beautiful daughters, a great career, a wonderful person to boot. Hey, here's a big happy story. One that I've been really close to. It's been fantastic, Rishi, chatting with you. Thank you so much for taking the time out to tell your story, to have a few laughs. Being in this business for 30 plus years, I'm sure experiences have been multiple, learnings have been multiple. You mentioned your desire to share. I'm going to end this one by requesting you to talk to our audience and give them a line or two about what consumes you. What do you feel really passionately about? What would you like to share with the world out there?
Mainstream radio, professionally, mainstream radio is going through a bit of a crisis. It's called a talent crisis. And that hurts me. And I want to see that change. And I believe it can change. Young kids walking through the door want to use radio as a stepping stone to do other stuff. And I can tell them the moment they walk through the reception of the radio station that I work at. There's one breed that wants to be an actor, and they feel, the starting pay at a radio station is 15,000-20,000 rupees, enough to pay the rent, while they can go from audition to become an actor. The second breed is people who pass out of communication institutes, who actually want to be the next Arnab Goswami or Barkha Dutt and newscasters. No disrespect to those people, but they want to add on to their CV saying, "I've done so much of radio," so that that can catapult them to a news career. I belong to a generation of Brian Tellis, of Roshan Abbas, of Amin Siani, people who did radio for the love of radio. They didn't want it to be a stepping stone to be elsewhere, to be somewhere else. And I want to take this opportunity to tell people that think of a career in radio. It is just so beautiful. To me, it is still the theater of the mind. You can tell so many stories in audio and leave so much to the imagination. It allows so much creativity. Now, whether you work for terrestrial radio or digital radio or even podcasting is not the question here. Devote your life to radio, or at least give it a chance. Give it a chance saying, I'm going to try and make a career out of this, and don't use it as a stepping stone for something else. Because it truly is, it's a beautiful, life-altering medium. I mean, something has changed so many of our lives. And I feel that it could change yours too. So that's something on the professional side. On the personal side, this is actually something on my WhatsApp line. On my WhatsApp profile, it is that the gentle and the mild shall inherit the earth. It disturbs me that there's so much violence on this planet, violence from human to human, violence against animals, violence against the environment, damage to climate. If we realize that if we are gentle and just mild, we will really inherit the earth. I mean, the wise men have said it, the prophets have said it, and it's time we do that. And I'd like to finally say that this is something that I've tried to practice myself, which is present moment awareness. I think we spend too much time obsessing about the past or thinking about a future which isn't even here. If we can just breathe in the here and now, I think we'd make a better life for ourselves, a better planet, and a better atmosphere for everybody around us.
Extremely well said. If any of you had doubts about the man's wisdom and more importantly, the man's passion, I'm sure there are no doubts now. Thanks for joining us on Tell Us Like It Is. I'm Brian Tellis. Until the next time.